Dr. Christopher West here, the Theology, the Body Guy. In this video, we're going to be looking at advice from my book, Good News About Sex and Marriage, as to what makes for a truly fulfilling sex life. Let's take a look. Hey, if you're new to this channel, we are all about showing you how our earthly bodies reveal heavenly, divine mysteries. If you want to dive deeply into questions about what it means to be human and why we are male and female in the first place, you're going to want to subscribe to this channel and help us out by compelling YouTube to get these videos out there by leaving a comment, clicking the notification bell, sharing with your friends. We're actually compelling YouTube to share the gospel when we do that. Thanks for your help. So we continue my series looking at questions from my book, Good News About Sex and Marriage. If you want to follow along, check out the link below to get yourself a copy. We are on page 87, and we are looking at what makes for a truly fulfilling sex life. I say here, the most fulfilling sex possible comes when husband and wife unconditionally surrender themselves to each other and receive each other in a completely naked and honest revelation of their persons. You might say that the best, most fulfilling sexual experience we can possibly have is when our physical nakedness corresponds to a spiritual nakedness, where we're really revealing our persons and entrusting our persons to the other. I said this in another video, but I am utterly convinced the only way we can really get as naked as we are meant to be in the sexual embrace is if you're with someone who is committed before God never, ever to leave you. Otherwise, it's impossible to be that naked. We're going to be guarding ourselves. We're going to be protecting ourselves against the hurt of someone leaving me, having made myself this vulnerable to the person. The safeguard for true revelation of the person is the commitment, I will never leave you, I will never forsake you, and that commitment is marriage. I go on to say, if sex is not delving into the inexhaustible mystery of the other person, then the partners in the exchange will inevitably grow bored. And the way our culture trains us to think about sex breeds this boredom. This is why you'll find thousands of so-called sex manuals on the market today trying to help couples to spice up their sex life and keep them from being bored with one another. Why are we bored with one another? We're bored with one another because we're not opening the inexhaustible mystery of the person. Persons are not boring. When we reduce what the sex act is to merely the exchange of physical pleasure, we inevitably grow bored. For the most part, these manuals offer suggestions that, if followed, would make what transpires in the marriage bed look more like more like a porn movie than about diving into the great mystery of who the person is, of what love is, of what it means to renew our marriage vows in and through the sexual act. But this is what it is meant to be. It's meant to be the naked revelation of my person in a gift of self that is free, that is total, that is faithful, that is life-giving. This is the commitment of marriage, and sex is really good, not just good. Sex is holy, sex is sacred, sex is mystical when a husband and a wife really and truly are surrendering their persons to one another in the image of the way Christ loves the church. This is what we're called to. We can't do it on our own. We are meant to be sharing a love. We are meant to be experiencing a union in the marriage bed that is literally a gift from heaven. And so we need to open our hearts to that gift. As I say here, if you really want good sex, start by inviting God, who is love, to be with you. And don't worry, God's not going to blush. He invented sex. He came up with this. He's the one who knows what it's all about. We have to invite him to be part of the act. This is how we have the most glorious sexual experience possible, by inviting the Lord of glory, by inviting the inventor of the sexual act into the marriage bed. Keep the lights on, I suggest. Consciously renew your wedding vows with the language of your bodies. Mean what you say, and say what you mean. Take the risk, I say, of surrendering your whole self unconditionally to your spouse. Receive your spouse unconditionally. As you do, look deeply and steadily into each other's eyes and thank God for the joy you now know in being made in his image, as you explode in the ecstasy of self-surrender and the renewal of your marriage commitment. But let's here say a word about ecstasy and what we mean by ecstasy. The word ecstasy actually means to go out of yourself. And going out of yourself is not going to be sheer bliss all of the time. Going out of yourself invites a sacrifice. It invites a vulnerability. It invites a surrender that is scary. So ecstasy means to go out of oneself toward and for the other, for the true good of the other, no matter what that costs me. And this means that the ecstasy of marital love, the ecstasy of the marital embrace itself, is also going to involve at times a certain agony. Love one another as I have loved you, Jesus says. Jesus' love certainly involves a kind of agony. I once heard it said years ago by a bishop. He said, marriage involves 4 rings. You have the engagement ring, you have 2 wedding rings, and then you have suffering. If we don't believe that, we haven't spent much time looking at a crucifix. This is the bridegroom giving up his body for his bride, and this is the kind of love we are called to. It is an agony that leads to a glorious ecstasy. Marital love entails a willingness to carry one another through life's joys and trials. The intimacy of the marriage bed will inevitably open up our fears, our hurts, our weaknesses, our sins, our insecurities. But authentic love is not afraid of these things. In fact, here I quote St. John Paul II, the strength of such a love emerges most clearly when the beloved person stumbles, when his or her weaknesses or even sins come out into the open. One who truly loves does not then withdraw his love, but loves all the more. Loves in full consciousness of the other's shortcomings and faults. For the person as such never loses his or her essential value. This is what happens in true sexual intimacy. It becomes an into me see, where we have the sheer privilege of catching a glimpse of the innermost mystery of the other person. When we reduce the sexual encounter to just the pleasure I can get out of it, then my love is only going to last as long as the pleasure lasts. And when the pleasure fades, when I get bored, I do away with that person and I seek my pleasure elsewhere. But truly awesome, glorious, intimate, as in into me see sex, you know what it involves? I like to say a woman's heart is like a deep ocean, and a man's heart is like a deep cave. And the mission of the husband in the marital embrace is to go deep sea diving, to pull up the treasures of his wife's heart. And the mission of the wife in the marital embrace is to go spelunking, cave exploring, to discover ever new treasures in these deeper caverns of his heart. This is the journey of real sexual intimacy. And it's a lifelong journey. There are fits and starts. There are struggles. There are fears we have in really removing the fig leaves. But perfect love casts out fear. We have to admit we don't have that perfect love. and we can never just muster it up. If we want our experience of sexual union to be a true experience of nakedness without shame, of into me see, of cave exploring and deep sea diving, then again, we have to open to that perfect love that does not originate in us. And we have to let God come into our very being, our very hearts, our very bodies as we share them with our spouse. This is what makes for truly fulfilling sexual union. My brothers and sisters, I have so much more to share about why God made us male and female, about how to live this out. None of us does it perfectly, but we can grow step by step in becoming the men and women we're really created to be. The courses we offer at the Theology of the Body Institute are designed to do just that, to help you become the man or woman you're really created to be. Check out the link below to learn more about our online and in-person courses, and check out the link to become a member of our patron community, where we offer ongoing exclusive formation in John Paul II's Theology of the Body. Until next time, may our eyes be opened to who we really are.